Welcome to the Union Federation podcast, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville here on the Fandom Podcast Network. On this show, we take an in-depth look at each of these franchises and discover that both of them can coexist in today's fandom as they introduce us to fresh, new, and exciting stories, characters, galactic destinations, and so much more. Of course, I am your host this week in the captain's chair. I am Kyle, but I am joined by the eccentric crew of the Union Federation. But we love them, and you know what? It all starts with the woman heading up not only the Weapons Council, but also, or the Weapons Council, but also teaching us everything every week science-y here on the Union Federation. Of course, it is the lovely Hayley Stoddard.
Hello. I am here. I have my tea, and I am ready to go.
But you know, it takes more of the crew than that. And every ship needs a good first officer. And, you know, I can't think of a better one than my co-founder here at the Fandom Podcast Network, Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
You have entered the Fandom Podcast Network Defense Force. Please leave immediately. Oh, sorry. Just letting things get to my head here. It's been one of those days. Sorry. I'm back. Hey, hi.
And, of course, too, she's a master of espionage. She goes on secret missions all the time. But more importantly, I think she might teach classes that are full of young people with a trill issue. So she knows how to handle some trill. Miss Amy Nelson is here.
Hello. So glad to be talking Discovery this week.
So yes, we are talking Star Trek Discovery this week. You know, the third season is here, and it's been a fun ride so far, and we're going to talk about that. But before we get started with anything, let's open up some hailing frequencies. Mr. Reitzel, would you care to tell the people where they can find the Union Federation and all the great shows under the Fandom Podcast Network umbrella?
Be glad to. First of all, we are on YouTube. The Fandom Podcast Network is on YouTube. Please head on over there. We'd love to subscribe. Check out our shows there. All audio podcast, of course, will be there as well. And we also have some cool live events there as well. So make sure you check us out on YouTube, Fandom Podcast Network. Of course, our master feed for all of our audio podcasts can be found on Podbean at fpnet.podbean.com. You can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on all major podcast platforms, which also includes Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Please check out our Union Federation Facebook page. We'd love to have you there and talk all Star Trek and Orville stuff there. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at Union Fed Podcast. You can also check us out at the Fandom Podcast Network main Facebook page. You can email us at unionfederation@gmail.com. My name is Kevin. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Spartan_Phoenix. Kyle, where can we find you?
You can find me floating around Twitter at AKyleW or on Instagram, if you can get past all the tribbles that I've been posting there lately, AKyleFandom.
And Hayley, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter. I am at Trekkie01D.
Awesome. And Amy, where can we find you?
Well, you can find me hosting a couple shows, Galaxy Class and All Good Things. And you can also find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson.
Awesome. There are two great ways you can support the Fandom Podcast Network and Union Federation Podcast. Please visit our TeePublic store. Head on over there, search for Fandom Podcast Network or Union Federation. You can find some great logos from our shows as well as our other great shows on the network. You can put on any apparel. Support us there. And also, please leave us reviews. Please support Fandom Podcast Network and Union Federation Podcast. We love reviews, especially on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Just search that out. Look for Fandom Podcast Network and let us know what you like here. We love 5-star reviews, of course, but we love feedback in general. Back to you, Kyle.
Okay, just a quick note, too. I got a communique via Subspace Channels that starting tomorrow, TeePublic is going to start its first of its holiday sales that they will be running many of throughout the holiday season. And two, Miss Nelson is breaking in her new computer this evening. We are the first official podcast on the Nelson 5000.
Yes.
Very, very true. This is serious, some upgrades. You know, that last computer had to have been from the 23rd century.
Was that the one that
how it was?
Was that the one that was run by the hamster on the wheel and you had to feed it? Is that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and I just sort of went out of town and I forgot to feed it.
Don't worry, Amy. We found a good place for it down on the lower decks.
Okay, good.
But without further ado, let's talk some Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 3, People of Earth, and we'll do that in the Officers' Lounge. So yes, it is the third season of Discovery, Episode 3, People of Earth, directed by Jonathan Frakes. You know, always good to have Riker back in the control of anything Star Trek. And you know what, guys? This was a fun episode. We see a few familiar faces in this. But you know what? I'm excited. I enjoyed this episode a lot. So I'm going to dive right in. Miss Stoddard, would you be so kind to read the teaser in Act 1 for us?
Of course. In a log entry set to be automatically transmitted if and when USS Discovery is ever found, Michael Burnham describes her years spent apart from the ship in the future, as well as the nature of the burn and the collapse of the Federation. She explains that she became a courier in order to search for clues about what caused the burn, look for ways to reunite the Federation, and search for Discovery. Burnham apparently spends some time traveling in a small craft of her own, but also shows she works with and is friends with Cleveland Booker. Burnham reveals she has accepted the fact that she may never see her former crewmates again, but her log is interrupted when she receives a notification that Discovery has been detected. Having rescued the ship from the parasitic ice on the colony, Burnham beams aboard Discovery and embraces her crewmates while sharing a nod with Philippa Georgiou. Burnham and Saru catch up while walking through the corridors. Burnham says she sent a transmission to Terralisium, but that the response took months to arrive and the residents had no knowledge of her mother. Burnham also promised to give Booker some Discovery's dilithium, which Saru promises to honor. On the bridge, Burnham describes how the burn killed millions, though Paul Stamets says nothing could have affected all dilithium across space at the same time. She reveals she discovered a 12-year-old transmission on an obsolete Starfleet channel. The message from Admiral Senatal says he awaits any remaining Starfleet personnel on Earth. Burnham proposes using the spore drive to jump to Earth, which is distant enough that she was unable to journey that far. Stamets asks whether he should prepare for a jump, but looks back and forth between Saru and Burnham, unsure who is in command. Saru notes the two of them must decide who will become captain. But Burnham declines and tells Saru he should be in command and says she is unsure if she was ever right for such a position. Saru sits in the captain's chair and tells the crew to prepare for their mission, prompting the crew to respond, "Aye, Captain."
Okay, so before we go any further, we're going to address something. Kevin Reitzel, Discovery has a captain. We know you've been waiting a long time for this.
Well, for this season. Who knows what it will be next season? But yeah, you know, that's just one of my little crepes. But you know, I'm dealing with that and I'm over that. But I just got to say that it was a beautiful moment with Michael Burnham there. I like the fact that Saru was like, we need to discuss this. You know, we have something to address here. You know, meaning that he wasn't comfortable enough in that chair to where he felt like he definitely earned it, but it took Burnham to say, no, not only did you earn it. And I love the line in there where she goes, you carried this crew on your shoulders. You got them here, basically. And then proves that he is the one that needs to be captain. And just with the look of all the crew on there, you can definitely tell that they agree with what she said. And that was a beautiful moment. I like that.
Amy, we are definitely seeing a different Michael Burnham in this so far in the season of Discovery.
We definitely are, and it sets it so beautifully in that recap of her, and when she's describing that year and with living with so much hope, and then realizing, man, I might have to give this up. You know, are they going to come through? And just the whole mental struggle that she had to go through to even come to terms of accepting that she might never see Discovery and her friends again, like that's going to affect you. And we see that throughout this episode brilliantly with her discussion with Tilly, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But, you know, just in that first part where she's like, some things you have to give up. And I just really felt for her. one small, tiny nitpick on the writing. She was talking about Booker and used the words that he was a friend. Oh, truest as the words, or what did she say? True.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I can't remember exactly how she put it.
Truest to the word, or what that word means. And then she did the same thing with Saru.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're the captain, truest as the word is.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the same. You could have, come on, writers. That's my only nitpick. And I'm done. But yes.
Hayley, I think Michael Burnham has finally learned some lessons in humility. And one of the other things I see is I noticed they're not playing so much up on her Vulcan heritage per se.
Mm-hmm.
Here.
It is interesting to kind of see this different Burnham, which is fine because I'm actually enjoying her. Although I will say I think they're setting it up that Burnham once again has to find herself. I know I saw somebody that I follow on Twitter had mentioned that, and it's like, oh look, another time that Burnham has to like discover who she is and figure out who she is. Again, like every season, she's got to figure out who she is, and I feel that. I can see that because, you know, she's been apart from Discovery for so long and kind of had to become something different. And at the end of the episode, you know, she mentions that she's got to find her way back to some of the things she let go of. And it's like, just grow and accept that you're not who you were. And that's okay. Like, you don't have to be a part of Starfleet anymore if you don't want to. Like, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point because it comes up a few more times as we go through the episode, and I know we'll discuss that. But Hayley, if you would be so kind to continue and read Act 1 for us.
Of course. Outside, Discovery various work pods and Dot 7s repair the ship's hull. Inside, Ensign Sylvia Tilly looks at a memorial wall with Starfleet insignia. She tells Burnham she has not had time to grieve those who died or were left behind in the past, including her mother, cousins, and other family. They lived their lives and died centuries ago, she says tearfully. She hopes to find something familiar on Earth to ground her, such as the Gateway Arch, the Great Pyramid, or homemade hummingbird cake. Cake is eternal, Burnham responds lightly. Tilly says she knows Burnham had let the Discovery crew go, which Burnham does not deny, and the two embrace. Tilly says Burnham's also seems lighter somehow. Booker beams aboard Discovery and is surprised to find not Kayla Detmer or Tilly at the controls, but Giorgio, about whom he says Burnham warned him. She interrogates Booker about whether his relationship with Burnham is romantic. He initially denies it, then refuses to discuss the matter with her further. Giorgio says she is no longer certain the Burnham of 3189 will still be earnest and doing the right thing. Later, Burnham extracts some dilithium from Discovery's core. The amount of dilithium amazes Book, who says it could run as many as a dozen sectors. Burnham reveals the ship feels familiar but far away, and Booker tells her she does not necessarily owe the Discovery crew anything. He also warns that their stash of dilithium will make the ship a target. She offers to bring Booker with them to Earth, where she says he would be safe from those who he hasn't angered. He says he believes in his conservation work and does not wish to give it up, but she says Discovery needs his help to mask their dilithium stores. In the ready room, Saru tells Burnham he is uncertain about trusting her judgment, and that while he is grateful she supported his captaincy, he was surprised at her lack of interest in the job. Burnham says she adapted to the unexpected new future in ways in which they found themselves. Booker's ship is brought into the shuttle bay where the dilithium is loaded and it is cloaked. Using the spore drive, Discovery jumps to the Sol system near Saturn. Book, impressed, says Burnham did not tell him about the spinning part. As Discovery approaches Earth, a system of advanced force field generating arrays activates, creating an impenetrable barrier around the planet. 2 non-Starfleet vessels approach as Discovery goes to red alert. They are hailed by Captain Ndoye of the United Earth Defense Force, who finds their view screen method of communication quaint. She informs Saru the Discovery has violated regulations C-1922 and F-031 of the United Earth Charter and orders the ship to leave immediately. Dun dun dun.
A lot happens in this one act. Amy, I got to tell you, my love for Book just grew tremendously in this one act alone.
Absolutely. And I loved that point that he made to Burnham's like, do you think that you owe them? You already went through a wormhole. Like, how much more are you going to give? So I really like that he asks her that, because it's a decision that she has to make. Again, this foreshadowing of where is her mind? Where is she? Is she with Discovery or is she not? So it was beautiful. And again, this act also had with Tilly describing Burnham as the dandelion blowing with the seeds blowing away, and just that whole scene of you let us go. And Burnham not denying it. That got me. That really got me there.
Kevin, is cake really eternal? Because we tend to eat cake as soon as it's put in front of us.
Cake is always eternal and will always be eternal and will be around for another 900 years. Thank you very much.
Only so long as it's cheesecake.
Yeah. There's a lot going on here, Kevin. What was some of the stuff that you took from it?
I was oh my God, they violated regulation C1922 and F031. I was like, oh my God. No, I have no idea what that means. I love the scenes. The Dilithian scene was kind of cracking me up just because it was so cool. It was so neat looking. It kind of reminded me of like one of the special elements taken from the G.I. Joe miniseries of the mass device. Like they had one of the mass device options. Star Trek fans are like, what? Okay. But I really enjoyed that. And I have to ask this. Are we finally getting used to bad words in Star Trek now? I mean, we get books saying shit. Yes, I said it. Are we used to that yet? Because I am. I don't care.
I think the thing, especially, I think Discovery especially times it out so perfectly. I mean, and that whole scene with Book, and it's like, you didn't tell me about the spinning part. And that was just great.
Tilly was like, caught herself.
Oh, she was like this close.
Before she said the F word or whatever it was in the last episode, I think it was. But I'm digging Book 2. I'm curious to see where it is. And I just want to throw this out. I think he's, of the 3 episodes, he's 2 for 3 for taking his shirt off. Go him.
Hey, if you got it, flaunt it. Hayley,
if you could see Amy's face right now, it's awesome. Blush, 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 blush.
Hayley, what did you take from this first act?
So something that really struck me, I thought it was really beautiful, this wall of badges that they have as a memorial for crewmates that have died. I thought that was really poignant and pretty, and something we've never seen in Trek before as far as anything goes like that. So that really stood out to me. The other thing was, I liked that they used Tilly to be kind of the first person to really be struggling with this notion that, yes, we jumped forward in time to save humanity, to save all life, but that magnitude of it, and like it hit her first, which isn't surprising. But at the same time, I really hope that other people are just kind of like, that magnitude of that decision really kind of comes forward, because that was really a beautiful thing to have. And that, she's recognizing that all her family, like they've left those messages, they recorded messages and sent them to him. But essentially, they still left them all behind without saying goodbye. They never got to see, their family grow up and grow old and do the things as she talks about, like, were they late for work, And I thought that was really beautiful, because we're people, and that very much would impact every single person that's on that ship and on that crew to some degree, even though they were excited about what they were doing and knew they had to do it. And so that was something that I really enjoyed. Kind of not surprised that Burnham didn't want the captaincy. I don't know about you guys. Didn't really surprise me one bit. And the other thing, and I didn't catch his badge, so I don't know if he was a lieutenant or ensign, but there's somebody, and he walks off the turbo lift and he says, "Welcome back, Commander," to Burnham. And her reaction to that was really interesting. That really told me that she really isn't sure that she wants to be a part of Starfleet crew anymore, because she just kind of like stood and paused for a second. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I got.
One of my favorite scenes in this act was the back and forth between Giorgio and Book. That was just complete and utter fun. It was like the mom and the dad, like, what have you been doing with my daughter for the past year? But I just love the fact that Book's like, oh yeah, Burnham warned me about you. That was a great character moment, and somebody who's willing to spar with Giorgio a little bit, which is always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Mr. Reisel, would you care to read Act 2 for us?
Would love to. Saru presents Discovery's cover story that it was on a long-term classified scientific expedition when it was effectively stranded by the burn, and that they are the descendants of the original crew. Ndoye notes the ship's design and metallurgy indicated it was built between the 23rd and 25th centuries and expresses skepticism that the so oldest ship would still be in service. Burnham and Book, both wearing civilian clothes, quietly leave the bridge. Ndoye insists the ship be inspected and abruptly beams her inspectors in across the ship, startling the Discovery crew. In Burnham's quarters, she and Booker dress in Starfleet uniforms so as not to arouse suspicion, though Booker complains about the livery. It is just a uniform, Burnham responds. In the corridor, she encounters Giorgio, who has also dressed in a Starfleet uniform, albeit with an admiral's rank. She notes Burnham does not appear to be thrilled to be back in uniform and speculates she grew used to living on her own rules, which allowed Burnham to discover who she really was. In the ready room, Saru tells Ndoye he was perplexed by Earth's gruff welcome. She replies that Earth was built to be self-sustainable following the burn, even as raiders tried to seize the remaining dilithium. She says the raiders' current leader is a relentless man named Wen. Ndoye tells them that the Federation and Starfleet left Earth a century prior, having left for an unknown destination. She says many of the ships destroyed in the burn were Federation and that many felt it was an attack and it could happen again that their presence on Earth made it a target. Burnham asked about the message from Senatau, which was sent 12 years ago. Ndoye's records show he died on an outbound ship 2 years before. In engineering, United Earth inspectors look over the equipment, annoying the crew. Adira, a young officer, questions why the spore cube is connected to Discovery's bridge controls. Stamets explains that he used the cube for controlled spore reactions, which requires coordination with the bridge. Adira responds that the ship is practically a museum. She tells Stamets that she's just 16 years old, but another inspector cautions her not to engage the Discovery crew. Suddenly, the ship sounds red alert. 5 vessels approach. Wen ships, Ndoye warns. Saru answers Wen's hail, and the helmeted raiders tells them to surrender their dilithium immediately. Convinced that the ship has none, Ndoye orders Discovery to leave Earth, and they deal with Wen. But she and her inspectors unexpectedly find themselves unable to beam away.
So, first of all, the United Earth Forces definitely needs to get the stick out of their butts. It's just saying that right now. But Hayley, you got a big smile going on, so I'm going right to you here. After what's got you smiling mile wide?
My cat.
We have a starry sighting.
We do. She's napping, and there was a weird sound, and I'm like, what in the world? It was her. She's dreaming.
Well, but Book has his cat. Our weapons officer has her cat. But Hayley, this act has a few interesting things in it. What did you take away?
Yeah, so this was quite fascinating. I'm intrigued by Adira and how this whole thing that we find out later in the episode came about, and kind of we'll discuss that a little bit more. But I thought one thing that was really interesting was that has Book never heard of synthahol or just never had it? Because he was like, synthahol? Like, obviously he's heard the term and he kind of knows what it is, but he's never had it before. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, this, we learned a lot. There's the Starfleet and Federation have not been on Earth for 100+ years at this point. And Ndoye is kind of an interesting character. She's very gruff and rough, but I get why she has to be. And And one thing in this, as they were putting on the uniforms, Burnham and Book, I don't know if you guys noticed, the fabric is different. And I like it. And the zipper doesn't have such an angle as it did in like the first 2 seasons, which always like bothered me. But I like the fabric of this a little bit more. And I'm also intrigued. Do you think there's like a metal like patch sewn into the fabric? Because they just go like this and then the badge is on.
Yeah,
it's probably magnetic, you know?
Yeah, magnetic.
I mean, I have magnetic ones, but I never really kind of thought like, oh, it just sticks on, like it's there. All right, take it off.
There's a miniature
put it back
transporter beam holding it together the whole time.
Yeah, a little tractor beam, a miniature tractor beam.
Little miniature tractor beam. But so those were some things that really kind of stood out to me. But it's really interesting. The one thing in this is I love Saru, and he says that Ndoye has no jurisdiction on his bridge. And he really stood up to her. But then this whole like story of, oh, we're descendants from the original crew, and that Saru's trying to explain like why they're there without like giving anything away. Really quite interesting.
Yeah. Kevin, what did you pull?
Adira, loving this young officer and the way that she presented herself and was very curious about what was going on. And I love the conversations between her and Stamets and the whole thing about, that's what someone in a museum would say, you know. That was kind of cool.
Museums are cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just thought that was a great Stamets moment as well. So yeah.
Amy, you just wanted to see Book in a uniform, right?
Well, out of the uniform, let's just be honest.
He'll have his shirt off in the next episode, you'll see.
Yeah. Kevin, does it feel like it's getting a little Captain Shiny Pants in here to you?
He's a good-looking guy, I got to tell you. It's like, let him do it.
And his personality, like you were saying, Kyle, with his exchange with Giorgio, and you know, she almost got him talking. He's like, nope, I'm not talking about this. We're done, you know, shutting off the conversation. And, you know, just, I thought the synthahol comment was very good. And I believed it because synthahol tastes like real alcohol. And so you wouldn't know the difference. And that's why I was like, I can't get drunk with this, you know, and then he's like, oh, well, maybe this routine will work now that I'm not drunk, you know? So it's sort of really cute banter that we get. We get a lot of information, like we said, with the Federation no longer being on Earth. And I think that sort of took the wind out of the sails of Saru and Burnham, because they're like, oh, there's no one here. What's going on? And it wraps up, I think, with the beginning of Tilly saying, we've lost everyone. There's no one here. And now there's no Starfleet on Earth. It's just like things keep getting worse and worse. But it comes full circle at the end, which I will talk about later. But I really like Tilly's optimism and just pure recognition of how brilliant Adira is. You know, she's a teen genius, you know, and I think that's, you know, she can recognize that. And she's, you know, it's like, well, I studied engineering, but I wasn't this smart. No one has been this smart. And so I like to see that. And I'm foreseeing some good friendship there between those two.
The thing I like about too is how she recognizes the intelligence by the fact that she knows the systems of a 100-year-old starship. But to me, one of the things we haven't hit on this too was I love the conversation between Giorgio and Burnham, because you see Giorgio kind of question Burnham, and Burnham having this taste of freedom away from Starfleet now. And I think that's something that's going to play up, and as the season goes along. And I, of course, you know, I love the fact Giorgio had to, of course, make sure she had the Admiral badge.
Yeah, of course.
Going on.
One thing too, I forgot to mention in this section, this is when we also find out that Earth is not part of the Federation. And Ndoye says, you know, we can take care of ourselves. And, you know, Star Trek's always been a reflection to us in our current time. And there was definitely a lot going on in this episode with stuff that's going on right now. and we can take care of ourselves, or we should just be taking care of ourselves and not worrying about other people. So I thought that was really kind of hitting the nose on the head.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
It's been interesting because I'm reading The Last Hope, the Star Trek Picard novel, and it's very similar in that the explosion from Mars, maybe it was an attack, maybe it wasn't. And then we also have this, like maybe the dilithium was tampered with, like this question as to who do we trust? Is there an attack imminent? Was it an attack? It's just all going through my mind, especially as I'm reading this book, that there's a lot of unanswered questions on, was there intent and purposes to blow up all the dilithium, ruin the Federation, ruin Starfleet, and then with what I'm reading with Picard. So I just find it very, very interesting and similar.
Yeah, no, I think those are good points. Moving on to Act 3, and I will read Act 3. Burnham finds Booker in the ship's mess, where he has been unknowingly drinking synthahol, which, as we discussed, she says she has a plan, but she has not gotten permission from Saru. In engineering, Tilly and Stamets find an unknown device tapped into their system inside a console. It has tapped into Discovery's deflector system to block the Inspector's transporters and will take hours to disable safely. The two quickly grow suspicious of Adira, who had examined that console earlier and was suspiciously knowledgeable of their 900-year-old starship systems. They are confused as to why she would trap her own people on board, but Stamets speculates she was trying to buy time for something. Burnham and Booker leave on his ship along with Discovery's supply of dilithium. Saru is angry but realizes Burnham must have a plan. Ndoye orders her ships to target the raider vessels, saying Wen cannot be allowed to obtain the dilithium. On his ship, Booker says the raider ships are much less powerful than those he is used to, as Grudge lounges nearby. Burnham and Booker discuss strategy in a shorthand that highlights their familiarity and history of working together. Burnham tells Wen that they will beam the dilithium over if he agrees to leave Earth's orbit immediately. Saru places Discovery in the United Earth ship's line of fire in order to protect Burnham. The two quantum torpedoes completely collapse Discovery's shields and cause explosions on the bridge. But Saru's sacrifice has only briefly delayed a battle. Wen tells Burnham and Booker that he will lower his shields to allow the dilithium to be beamed aboard. As tensions rise, Joanna Awaskun reports that Booker's ship has cloaked, and Jen Rice says that the raiders are powering down weapons. The turbolift door opens to reveal Burnham and Booker holding Wen captive. They beamed him off his ship and onto Discovery, and the raiders are unwilling to fire on them with Wen held hostage. Burnham says it's time for Ndoye and Wen to talk. Okay, guys, I got to say this first and foremost. The shorthand conversation between Book and Burnham was my favorite part of this episode, as they're going through different scenarios, trying to figure out, well, I ended up covering you in feathers in that one. No, scales. It was scales. No, feathers. It's like, no, that one broke my nose. Grudge wouldn't look at me for days. It was so sad. I mean, there's just so much going on in such a short section. Kevin, what did you pull from this?
Just really good character development with everyone involved here. I was really enjoying this, and Return of Grudge too. I love that as well. But it made me think of the question of how are they going to bring? Is Book just going to be in for a couple of episodes, or is he going to be in for the rest of the haul here? So this is one of the things that I was really kind of getting a question of. But you know, I'm starting to think. I was starting to think at the bigger picture during this act right here as well, because I think the quest for this particular season is to find out more about the burn. But then I start asking myself where the rest of the characters and how they're going to jump into this, with the raiding pirates and all this kind of stuff. And so this was kind of like the very important third act of, a lot of different plays and movies and stuff like that. That third act is where stuff is really kind of starting to come full force. And I really felt that. I really felt the writers were really trying to tell you that a lot of stuff is on the plate here. A lot of plates are spinning. And so, yeah, that was my impression of this act.
Yeah. Hayley, if we try the Orion maneuver, that was fun the last time we tried that.
It definitely was. No, I like that back and forth and the quick easiness that Book and Burnham have with each other. I really enjoy that relationship so far at this point. There was some things in this that really just were very Starfleet. The fact that Burnham wants to get Wen and bring him aboard Discovery and force him and Ndoye to talk. That is Star Trek to its core, bringing people together who are different and are fighting each other to talk to each other. And that was really beautiful, but it's kind of sad at the same time that up to this point, Ndoye never even wanted to try to talk to him or figure out why he was doing what he was doing, which I know we talk about in the next act. And so that was also really sad and very poignant and stuff for now, because how many people don't want to talk to somebody because there are differences. They just say, nope, we're too different. Never going to talk to him ever. I loved Tween Menace and Stamets talking to her like she kind of like a bratty teenager that she is. He's just kind of treating her that way. But I thought that was so funny. Yeah, that's what I liked.
Couple of things, Amy. First and foremost for me too was I love the line that Giorgio had about irresistible force and immovable object and how she applied it to both Saru and Burnham. I thought that was absolutely wonderful. The other thing that I found very interesting when Hayley brought up that point, how the Earth Defense Forces feel, because I think it's something that's a general thing within the universe at this point with what has happened is everybody's kind of out for their own. There's nobody who's willing to work together, and yet it was old Starfleet that ended up helping resolve, at least start the process of resolving the situation.
Yeah, it was, I think, as Kevin was saying, this act, we get the buildup, the suspense. And I think one of the things that I thought, again, Jonathan Frakes directed this, did an excellent job, along with the writers, was, I think, Saru's dedication and loyalty to Burnham. Because in the previous act, well, should we bring Booker with us? Should we allow Booker to have all of our dilithium? And he takes that leap of faith and trusts Burnham. Okay, I will trust you, even though there's hesitancy. And we see the hesitancy even with Tilly. You let us go. Where are you? And the conversation with Giorgio, you had your freedom, I can tell. And even Saru had to just order Detmer, you will put us in the place where we need to be. We are going to protect and we are going to stand with Burnham. She has never let us down. And Saru's loyalty is so amazing, even during this questionable time that we all are feeling with Burnham. And he's just so sure about it. And I absolutely love that. And even in hard times, we know Burnham's going through a hard time. She has her family. And I think that comes back in the last act. Is like, yeah, I do want to be your officer. And I know we'll talk about that, but I feel that suspense and the questions of, is Burnham going to leave him out to dry? Saru just believes her wholeheartedly. And that is Star Trek to me as well.
Yeah. Well, with that, Miss Nelson, would you care to read Act 4 and take us out of this episode?
Yes. Wen complains that Earth hoards its dilithium without using it, leaving others to suffer. Burnham urges them to speak face to face. Wen is uncooperative, but an impatient Giorgio attacks him and removes his helmet, revealing him to be human. Diplomacy takes so much time. Meanwhile, Stamets finds Adira in a Jeffries tube studying the ship. He asks why she sabotaged Discovery, and she explains that she found the ship's technology suspicious. He explains that Discovery uses the spore drive as an alternate form of faster-than-light travel, and that he is the system's unique human navigator. Stamets reveals Discovery is from the year 2258 and demands Adira reveal her secret as well. Adira explains she became an inspector in the hopes of finding a Federation starship and that she wishes to accompany Discovery on its mission. She says she knows Tal. In the ready room, Burnham notes Wen's vessel is crowded and broken down. Wen reveals he is from an old research colony on Titan that became independent from Earth a century ago, but was devastated by an accident at its liquid hydrocarbon research facility that destroyed a third of the inhabitants, ruined their tillable soil, and left them without long-range communications. He says the first ship sent to Earth seeking help was destroyed, and they knew they were on their own. Ndoye says Earth was unaware of Titan's troubles. The Starfleet officers propose a trade, with Earth providing relief and Titan sharing its research findings. Ndoye subsequently praises Saru's handling of Wen and invited Discovery's crew to visit the surface. She also has authorized Adira to remain aboard Discovery and wishes them luck in searching for Starfleet. Saru says Stamets told Adira knows how to find Tal. I am Admiral Tal, Adira reveals. Saru later tells Burnham that Adira, though human, was joined with a Trill symbiont. Burnham says she has seen Trills at the exchanges, but was unaware that they carried symbionts. Saru says the sphere data indicates the symbionts are sentient, benevolent, and long-lived, transitioning between hosts who can access prior host memories. However, Adira has some trouble accessing Tal's memories, possibly because she is human and not Trill. Burnham admits she should have informed Saru of her plan beforehand. She adds that she would be proud to serve as his first officer, but that her year alone in the future meant she let go over certain things on Discovery, and she will need time to find her way back to them. Saru says he will trust her to grow through her change. Burnham bids farewell to now Booker. He says she owes him, though Burnham retorts that she provided him with a dilithium, a life in a new quadrant. On the bridge, Burnham finds Saru watching an image at the building that is used to house Starfleet Academy on the view screen. The rest of the bridge crew has gone to the surface for a visit, but Burnham says she will admire the view from Discovery alongside Saru. On the surface, Tilly, Oweshakon, Detmer, Reese, Nilsson, and Bryce visit a tree many of them used to study under at the Academy, now grown into an enormous round trunk. Reese notes that they have now stood on the same spot 930 years apart. Saru hails Tilly, who begs for 5 more minutes on the planet, a request Saru grants.
So many fun things in this final act, and some emotional things too as well. I think this final act sets up kind of what feels like kind of a close to our opening story of the season of Discovery and starts to motion the next steps. Hayley, what did you feel coming out of this final act and as the episode as a whole?
So this was really, I think, well done. We had our conflicts and everything in this episode, but then it was wrapped up, or at least starting to be by the end, which is very typical for us. And I liked that they were able to go down to Earth, and not everybody did, but I think that's wonderful. Although I do have to admit that I wish they would have shown more than just San Francisco and where Starfleet and used to be. I will also point out topographics are wrong in that. Kyle, you might notice that, or Kevin, you might notice that too.
I was like, yeah, no, things aren't quite right there.
Yeah, but I thought it was really interesting that somehow at this point, so I guess if we take Discovery back in the time when it was, were there never Trills before? Like, is this not a concept? Because they're like, oh, yeah, well, there's Trills in the sphere data, but like they've never encountered one. They don't know about them really. And I thought that was really kind of interesting, to say the least. But this whole discussion with Wen and Ndoye and how Earth is so on the offensive that they can't even like communicate with the ship that's come towards them. They just immediately fired on it without even asking who they were, where they came from, is really sad. Like, that really saddened me that they did that and set this whole plan in motion of Wen and attacking Earth and trying to get resources. And like inadvertently and unknowingly killing their own people. And I'd like to know more about this research colony on Titan. That sounds very fascinating to me. And yeah, just this Trill thing, I just don't understand. And then Saru's line that trust must remain an assumption between us. Just goes to show that while he might outwardly to the crew show that he trusts Burnham, inwardly, he doesn't. And that's kind of started from season 1, really. I don't think he ever really trusted her after season 1.
You know, I don't think it's entirely that he doesn't trust her. It's just that he always knows that Michael's going to do her own thing. And he can't always rely on her to be trustworthy in that aspect. But there's a few other things. First of all, Kevin, I need an episode with Stamets, Adira, and Jet Reno together, because that would just be all epicness of awesome.
That was the only thing that was missing in this episode is Jet Reno, because I would have loved for her to be right next to Stamets, you know, while she was up in the Jeffries tube, and it's like, what are you doing up there? And then like as she's coming down, Adira's coming down a ladder, he's like spinning his thumbs, you know, just ready to kind of lay into her, but politely, and he does. I'm looking at a
sick bay with a hurt back.
Yeah. By the way, I'm looking at this screenshot of the pull away shot from San Francisco, and it looks like Oakland is aged quite well across the bay there, Kyle. I'm just gonna say, yeah. and that yacht that's underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, is that a captain's yacht? That thing is pretty posh. I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And when did they stop traffic going over there? Has it always been like, you know, these
solar panels?
Yeah, solar panels. I mean, that kind of sucks. You want to walk across that thing. That thing's beautiful. So I don't. Also, just another thing I wanted to mention too was I love the scene at the end when the crew is down there by the tree. I wonder if that's anywhere near the tree that Boothby caught Picard carving some initials in. Just throwing that out there. I like the scene. Okay, so we've talked about how Burnham is an evolving character in this season so far. And I think we're really enjoying what we're seeing from her than what we have been seeing. She was kind of like let's just be honest. She was a human/Vulcan android with not a lot of emotions, it felt like, you know, but she's really, they're writing her really well, because we know Sonequa can act, but I think they're writing her really well and giving her a lot more room to be basically more, not human, but just more reactionary and emotional. And one of the things that I find really attractive in women is when they smile, and they have a nice smile, and they smile with their eyes. And that's one of the things I've noticed with Burnham in this one, especially the scenes with Booker. I really enjoy those little moments of her, especially when he mentions, like, you know, I got a rash from that uniform. The other thing too that stood out was that wonderful scene where Burnham's with Saru in the room. I'm not sure exactly what room it was, like a conference room or something, but I love how they have the old fashioned telescope in that room. And I just thought that was so cool. And the fact that she was honored to basically be number one, I thought that was a great scene there. But as Hayley noted, that it did kind of wrap up some things here. And there were some very Star Trek-y things about it, which I loved. I thought it was great. You know, like you said, getting the two warring people together to talk and stuff like that, because then you can use each other's resources to try and figure out what the heck is happening here, you know, and try to put all these pieces together. So that's my take.
The Star Trek fanfare came in when and Ndoye were willing, when they said that they were both willing to discuss terms with each other. I don't know if anybody picked up on that, but I was like, oh, dang.
Yeah. Amy, you know, one of the things that I kind of got from coming out of this act was it feels like maybe they're trying to set this ship of the Discovery and their crew as the hope for this new universe, maybe to bring it back together in a way. But I also got to say this. You think Earth and Titan might at least give Discovery some upgrades, because one quantum torpedo knocking out your shields is a little scary.
It is, yes. They do need some upgrades, and hopefully they have made some friends there, and I'm pretty sure that they have. Kevin, you were talking about the telescope. And when I saw that, that just instantly took me back to season 1. And I think it was episode 3. I might be mistaken, episode 4 maybe. But that's when Georgiou left the telescope to Burnham and it was beeping. And she ignored it, put it under her bed until the very end of the episode and took it out. And it was Captain Georgiou's telescope, that she had left. And so to have to have Saru setting it up, it brought me full circle. And I was like, it was so beautiful. I loved that sort of chain of command because we sort of thought that Burnham was going to be captain and Georgiou wanted Burnham to take her place. And now it's with Saru. I just thought it was very, very lovely bookend to that. And I'm very excited to learn more about Adira and the Trill and her adventures of trying to get those memories. I am very, very happy that they did not pull a next-gen neutral zone scenario with the writing. On the neutral zone, that's the one where they had the cryogenic people from the, our 20th century. And oh my gosh, the one lady and Troy helps her find her progenitors and they have the same name. The same name. I'm like, okay, this has been over 100 years and it looks like my Donnie. Okay, no. That was an epic fail that they did in The Next Generation. And so I'm glad they didn't have, Tilly, you're the ancestors from, that timeline. Here they are, and here are these people, and here's your family. No, let's just stick to the memories that you have. It was very well done. They had the nostalgia back home, but then yet still recognize, this isn't home. So I think they did it much, much better than they did in the neutral zone.
Yeah. Now, guys, before we close out here of the officers launch, I want to hit on something Amy and I were actually talking about off mic right before we recorded. And that is, so far, this season of Discovery has just felt like at a totally different level and almost a totally different show in certain aspects. And I want to ask each of you guys individually, are you feeling that? Because I'm feeling that in a couple of ways. One, we've talked a little bit how they're writing Michael Burnham and how, even though she's still a very important part of the show, you actually enjoy Burnham in this season. But I think the biggest thing for me with Discovery so far is the sense of fun. And it's a lot more lighthearted than it has been in the past. And I was just curious to see, for each of you, do you feel like this is definitely an improvement in Discovery, or do you feel like that there's still more work to do, or what that goes? And Kevin, I want to start with you because I know you came in with the most uncertainty about Discovery coming into this season.
It's definitely an improvement, and there's definitely more work to do, definitely, for at least in my opinion. But I'm curious, and I'm eager to see more. I like, when they keep bringing characters in like this that kind of command their performance, and we want to see more like of Book, even with his shirt off. But even, Adira and all these other cool characters, it's nice when you have a character come into an episode, and even if it's only for that one episode, and then you start thinking about that character later on, thinking, I wish they would come back. That means that they did their job. The writers did their job. In the story development in general has done their job. And that's what makes a good Star Trek episode, all of these pieces. And we've been missing a lot of these pieces. They might hit on one or two things. Captain Pike, let's just be honest. To me, that's what saved season 2 for me, along with a few other things. But, that was a crutch, but a wonderful crutch, because now we're going to get that character story in its own spinoff, which is great. But this is what I like seeing, all these different pieces being brought together and, lightening up a little bit, jumping in on a lot of the other secondary characters, even though if they're teasing some certain things from certain people and they're not fully going into it yet. This is what I'm digging.
Yeah. Real quick too, Kevin, shout out for you Emmy, longtime Sci-Fi Channel mainstay Christopher Heyerdahl as playing the Wen character in this week's episode.
Interesting you bring him on. I don't know if it's Heyerdahl or whatever, but he's a very interesting character because he co-starred with Captain Shiny Pants in Hell on Wheels.
He's been around. More Star Trek Hell on Wheels. Like I said, Hell on Wheels, holodeck simulation. That's all that was.
Great character actor.
Amy, we talked a little bit about it off mic. Like I said, I know you're feeling just so much more energized by this season of Discovery.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that levity, the lightness is there. I mean, until he uses that word light with Burnham, I think it's transcending this entire season. And just a case in point, like when Stamets was looking up and talking to Dira, like, what are you doing in there? The music instantly changed to this light. Oh, I'm a teen. I'm, just getting into trouble. But it was just, I loved the music selection there. And I was like, I'm pretty sure we never heard anything that light and whimsical in season 1 or season 2. I love the fact that we are getting stories in an episode, right? We learned about Wen, and we learned about Ndoye, and we got them together and they're talking. And, last week we got out and we, took down the bully and we were able to escape the ice, parasitic ice. Like, we're telling stories, completing them, wrapping them up, having that good feeling, and still learning about the overall arc, about what is the burn and can we get Federation coming back. So it's just the perfect mix. I have watched each episode 3 times so far. So that's 9 times that I've seen Discovery since season 3. And I'm enjoying each time I watch it. And I think it's just the perfect mix for me of episodic, the lightheartedness, the character development, and getting little bits of information of the long game.
Hayley, what about you? How do you feel so far with Discovery Season 3?
So far, I can definitely say outside of some episodes in season 2, I'm enjoying it. Overall, each episode has been really enjoyable to watch. You've learned some new things. They've all been different episodes, which has been nice. It's not, okay, we're going to carry over from last week this story thread, or, the entire episode is going to be just a continuance of last week's episode kind of thing. Not even like in a 2-parter realm. It's just like, oh, okay. And so that's been really nice. I think the writing is doing a lot better this season. The lighting even it's brighter. The ship isn't as dark as it was before. And so I'm enjoying it. I think overall they're doing really, really well with this season 3.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. But you know what? We're going to take a quick break, tell you what else is going on around the Fandom Podcast Network. And when we come back, we're going to have a little trivia for you, talk a little Ready Room. And you know what? We never know what the communications disc might pick up. But first, here's what's going on around the Fandom Podcast Network.
Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to the Fandom Podcast Network and all of the other awesome shows we have to offer. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, our weekly pop culture news podcast. Bloody Kings, our Highlander podcast. Couch Potato Theater, our podcast celebrating our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite pop culture topics. End Zone, the NFL podcast. Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville podcast. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our Doctor Who podcast. Lethal Mullet, a 1980s and 90s action film podcast. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. And our newest show, Making Treks, a new Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. You can enjoy all of these great Fandom Podcast Network shows on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. You can also find us on Facebook under Fandom Podcast Network. You can also email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter under Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom.
And we're back, and we hope you're enjoying everything else that's happening here around the Fandom Podcast Network, as we always strive to make better podcasts to feed your ears. But we've got a little episode trivia here for you, and I found this kind of interesting. And, you know, Kevin, Amy, you guys are my next-gen guys. The character of Adara is a human host of a Trill symbiote. The director, Jonathan Frakes, played the first human host of a Trill symbiote in The Host in 1991 when his character, Ruler, chose to host Audan at great risk to his health. I'm turning it over to you guys. Amy, you ladies first. Great thing for Jonathan Frakes to throw back to.
Absolutely. And I love that episode. Riker does great. I love the Beverly and Odan relationship. It really does, open that possibility of, oh yeah, a human can be a host. And so it just, great callback. I loved it.
Mr. Reitzel.
Oh yeah, that was good. I just love the fact that it was on a Frakes directed episode too, and I wonder if he has that old prosthetic of that kind of like that stomach flap that just was easily opened and out comes the Trill and goes the Trill. I just loved it. I thought it was a great throwback.
Hayley, any thoughts on this?
It's interesting. I almost want to say in my headcanon that Trills have always been around. It's just that they've never interacted with anybody else. And so that's why no one really knows who they are until TNG, which just doesn't make any sense. Like suddenly they just popped up. There they were.
Yeah. Now,
I guess they wrote them in, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Reitzel.
I wanted to add one other piece of interesting trivia that I did not put in the notes. I just discovered it doing some research because I was checking out the other characters in this episode. And, the other actors too. And I want to go back to Adira, which is played by Blue Del Barrio, Blue spelled B-L-U. This is this actor's first credited role here on Discovery. And Blue Del Barrio is a non-binary actor who uses they/them pronouns. Del Barrio was in their final year of studies at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art when they auditioned for the role of Adira on Star Trek Discovery. Del Barrio has been acting in theater since the age of 7, and they're incredibly excited to make their television acting debut in season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. And there was a article on Star Trek Daily News regarding this, and it said that there had been some confusion this week over Star Trek Discovery's newest cast members. And last Thursday's episode, speaking of this Discovery Season 3, People of the Earth, we finally meet Adira. They were touted before the season start as Star Trek's first non-binary character played by a non-binary actor, newcomer Blue Del Barrio. But in the course of the episode, Adira is repeatedly referred to as she or her. Now, undoubtedly, we can expect to find out more about this character and their gender identity as the season progresses. In an interview with Sci-Fi Wire this weekend, Del Barrio explained that their character's journey will mirror their own. Adira is non-binary, they said, even when people are using she/they pronouns for Adira because they have not shared their identity with the Discovery crew. And this was basically the case because I still wasn't really out to my family, and I didn't want to be out on the screen as a character who was out until I was and wanted to wait until I had told my family and my friends. So I kind of came out alongside them. Del Barrio also confirmed that Adira themselves is non-binary and always has been non-binary as opposed to becoming non-binary because of their circumstances.
Interesting.
I had wondered about that because I had heard the terms she and her in the episode, and I thought, okay. And I saw people being upset about it. You know, I saw tweets of people were upset about this. And I thought there has to be more to this story, that it's going to morph into they, them, rather than she, her in the season. And so that's really nice that they gave the interview on that and explained that process. And that's really beautiful that they didn't want to come out before in a show before telling their family. I think that's a beautiful part to it.
The first time I had started learning about this non-binary term, because this is new to a lot of people, and I'm going to be honest, I am new to this as well. Kyle was actually in John Wick 3 Parabellum. The actor Asia Kate Dillon, who played the adjudicator, also identifies that way.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, it's fairly new to me as well. Well, but I think this is what Star Trek is about.
Yep.
These kind of things. So,
well, and
Amy?
I also, you know, as we were going through, I'm like, are we supposed to be saying, you know, she and her with Adira? I mean, I knew about the actor, but we don't really know Adira. And I think this is a time where it's a mirror to society, where we've come from a very binary he, him, she, her. And so I think through Star Trek, we're going to see the progression. And I think it's going to be beautiful. I really am looking forward to seeing it. I don't suspect that it's going to be a major plot. I think it's going to come out. It's going to be natural, just as, you know, as Culber and Stamets. You know, it's just going to be a natural, and we're going to transition, and we're going to use the correct pronouns as Adira would want to be called, they, them. But it's going to be a progression, and I think that mirrors societies, and I'm very looking forward to it.
So, guys, moving forward, any comments from the Ready Room this week? I'll be honest with you, hadn't get a chance to watch it because I was busy with Tribbles and a few other things, but it looks like Hayley's got some exciting things already. She's going bonkers. So what do you got from the Ready Room?
I was totally right about how the music was done. When they went into quarantine and they were in post-production and people were like, well, wait, how is Jefferson Russo composing the music? And I thought he's going to have the musicians record their individual tracks somehow at home and put it all together.
Through the whole COVID thing, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, through the whole COVID thing and the lockdown and everything like that. I thought he's going to just have everybody do it at home. And he did. That's right. Jeff Russo did that. He had everybody record it. Some people had glitches and he had to figure out how to get it. But he had everybody record their stuff individually and send it to him, and then he put it all together. So bravo, Jeff Russo, for doing that, because I can only imagine that was a lot of work and took a lot of time to put that all together, but I called it.
Amy, anything from the Ready Room?
Well, I watched the Ready Room after a day of wine tasting.
Oh.
So really, the only thing I can comment on, and I just am ashamed, but I'm going to say it, Jonathan Frakes' hair is getting long. I'm thinking I like him a little more clean cut. I like the look. And I know it's just silly to be talking about hairstyles. And I know, you know, female actors hate it when all they do is talk about my hairstyle. But yeah, I was wine tasting. So that's what I remember noticing.
So what we're saying is drunk Amy doesn't care for hippie Riker, Kevin.
Right.
That's all right.
Kevin, you got a chance to watch the Ready Room this week, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, too. I also want to let people know, and you brought it to my attention, that it showed up on YouTube on CBS All Access, so you can try to watch it there in case you have trouble streaming it, like I know a few of you did too. So, yeah, I want to say, okay, so did I hear Will Wheaton refer to Jonathan Frakes as Johnny?
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about that. We're like, wait, they're that comfortable with each other?
That is
I'm
what
sure
you
they
call that is what you call nickname earned, meaning that not that Jonathan Frakes earned that name, but that Will Wheaton earn the right to call him that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or it's either that or knowing those two, there's an inside joke with that.
That's a possibility.
Probably. I just thought that was great. It was nice that he had Johnny Frakes on at the same time with the writers. The writers on there, and they were kind of talking about the direction of the show and what was going on. And I just want to echo what Hayley was saying about the music. I thought it was nice to finally see him get some spotlight, because I don't think we have talked about the music, but I don't think the music has really gotten the credit that it deserves for setting the mood and painting this audible picture for us through this series. And it's been one of the highlights. And I just loved hearing that guy's thoughts and how he was talking about having to work, in this COVID environment and not having everyone around, and also explaining how big the orchestra is pertaining to the story that they're working on, where he would talk about they would have somewhere from 40 to 45 to sometimes up to 60 and 65, depending on what the episode calls for. So I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. No,
I will say it was hilarious that Will Wheaton talks about having a fanboy moment about being on the bridge when he was on TNG. And he was like, "Oh my God, I get to be on the bridge."
Yeah, he was comparing it to a Chris Farley moment when Chris Farley had that interview thing on Saturday Night Live, and he was really nervous.
and Jeff Russo having his fanboy moment about getting to meet Will Wheaton. And I just thought, I love that celebrities and people who are in Hollywood, I mean, they're human, but I love when they have those fanboy or fangirl moments like the rest of us about other people in the industry. I just think it's just the sweetest and like funnest thing when they get to react like that.
Yeah, no, that is always fun. But you know what? It isn't an episode of Union Federation without intercepting some subspace signals. Not a lot out there, but a couple interesting things. Production on Discovery Season 4 has officially begun, and it starts with Doug Jones, who posted a great picture of before and after getting ready for Saru, his nice full head of hair back to being his bald Silver Surfer self. Guys, it's good to know Discovery Season 4 is underway. Doug Jones has really, really become a major voice for Star Trek in the last year and a half. And I love it. Doug Jones is one of the sweetest human beings on the planet. If you've ever had a chance to meet him at a convention or anything like that, he's not a handshaker. He's a hugger. But he is great. Kevin, you would appreciate this. When Matt Clifton and I met Doug Jones, the ultimate hug between Clifton and Doug Jones was amazing.
Oh yeah, totally. I could see that. And, one of the things that I love that he's done with Saru is something that I noticed that I'm forgetting his first name, the actor Jackson that plays Isaac on the Orville, the robot, that they create their own character movements. And I love the fact that Doug Jones's arms are so long and he's got those prosthetics on his hands. And when he walks around, he kind of sways the arms behind him in this kind of like little waddle thing that Hayley is demonstrating right now. I love that. And that's one of the cool things that he brings to that character. And I thought that was really, really cool. And seeing him like show what he looks like before he shaves his head was neat in that article. But the thing that I thought was fascinating in this, Kyle, was that when they were talking about going back into production and how things are different because of COVID. And he says the departmentalization of everything on the set, there's going to be different department bubbles and much less intermingling with fewer people on set, and maybe a shorter workday as well. We aren't sure how things are going to go. It feels like a big COVID dance, and we're all going to throw some filming in and just make a whole show out of it. And he laughs. But here's the interesting thing here. Another season 4 change will be less location shooting. So the production has acquired a new AR wall that allows them to create virtual sets, essentially bringing locations to the soundstage. This sounds very interesting and very familiar, Kyle, because this is what has revolutionized what we are seeing on Star Wars The Mandalorian show, where they film inside this gigantic, large virtual dome that allows them to program any set location, and it makes you feel like that you're there, but you're inside an enclosed environment and you don't need to really go anywhere. I know they have another set outside. I'm speaking of The Mandalorian, where they can do like some outside stuff that is also closed. But this is the future of filmmaking, and also it helps save on the budget.
Yeah, big time. Amy, season 4 is coming. We're confirmed. It's exciting to see Doug Jones, and I think he's a great spokesman for Trek right now.
I agree. You know, I'm not a huge Twitter person, and it's very frustrating that I follow specific people and I never see their tweets. That's a whole other discussion. But randomly, I did see Doug Jones' tweet of him shaving his head. And you're right. He has just completely embraced this Star Trek family. He is one of our own. And I love what he does for his fans. And he's done it. I mean, that's who he is. I mean, when Burnham was saying, well, Saru will protect us, and Book's like, why would he do that? Because he's Starfleet. I mean, I just felt like she was talking about Doug Jones. Doug Jones is truly an amazing, beautiful, wonderful person. And I'm excited that he is championing Star Trek and embracing it and loving all of us Trekkies. So I'm very excited.
Hayley, any thoughts now that Discovery season 4 is underway?
It's really exciting that, they're trying to figure out how to film while this whole COVID and pandemic and everything's going on. I am intrigued. These screens, I almost wonder if they're similar to some of the not interactive, but some of the screens on some of the rides when we were at Universal, because they have spots where the ride stops and you very much feel like you're in, like they were Hogwarts, like one of them was Hogwarts, like very much felt like you were flying around the castle. So I almost wonder if that's kind of the same screen as what they're going to be using.
If you want a good example of this, if you have Disney Plus, watch The Gallery, The Mandalorian. It's an 8-episode series. One episode focuses strictly on this dome technology that Lucasfilm developed. It's going to be very similar to what we're going to use for Discovery Season 4.
Kind of think of it like the what do you call those theaters that you sit in and you watch some,
IMAX, the IMAX dome.
The IMAX?
Yeah, but the dome type thing, I forget what you call those, but you would see them in, I don't know, like a school or something like that. I forget the exact name of it, but
like when they have the star display.
Yes,
astronomy,
exactly.
What's that
called? Observatory?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But you're basically inside this big domed room where most of it is just a gigantic screen, and the computer experts can get in there and project any background with complete clarity, and it looks like you were there. And they talk to the actors going like, man, it's kind of weird because you walk in there and you're like, you kind of forget where you are,
Yeah, it's very
fascinating.
But moving on, we have one other Subspace Signal, and that is Aaron Waltke, one of the producers for the new Nickelodeon Star Trek Prodigy animated series, become one of the first people to really speak about Prodigy. He's quoted in the article in the Daily Star Trek News. Star Trek Prodigy is one of my favorite things I've ever worked on. Waltke had previously worked with project creator Kevin and Dan Hagman as a co-exec producer of Wizards Tales of Arcadia. He said, coming onto the Star Trek scene to write Prodigy seems to be an enjoyable challenge for him. As Waltke said, as a hardcore Trek fan, it honestly felt less like writing a script and more like breathing. Now, while he couldn't share many details on what audiences can expect to see in Star Trek Prodigy, Waltke did take a moment to talk about what working on Star Trek and writing for Captain Janeway means to him. Feeling satisfied that Prodigy honors classic Trek, Waltke said the new series also provides an entry point for new audiences to be introduced to the world of the Federation and its aspirations for an idealistic future, even when facing adversity. I'm excited about this project. The Janeway news a couple weeks ago got me excited. I think, too, it's going to be something different from Lower Decks. Obviously, it's not going to be on Nickelodeon. But I think this is going to be a great project to introduce a new generation into Star Trek. Hayley?
I'm excited for that. But as you mentioned Janeway, did you guys see the news about the unveiling of her bust that they put up?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, well, I don't have the article. Her future, so very much like we have the future birthplace of Captain Kirk thing. They did the same thing for Janeway, and it's got a bust, and if she had arms on it, she would be doing her crossing her arms stance. And
Definitely
they
deserve it.
have
That's really cool.
a stand
was your
that's got like a
where's your
little
character
table
from?
that
I
kind
don't
of talks
remember.
about Janeway and Voyager and stuff like that. So that was really cool. I think that was last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say. What's interesting is that, as you said, Waltke grew up just outside of Bloomington, Indiana, which is the future birthplace. So Bloomington, Indiana, and Waltke is growing up in that area. And so he says in the article, having the opportunity to help bring the Janeway character back to life brings a special meaning to the project. And feels oddly iconic, and what I love, his one quote that I really liked, he says, "My personal mission working on the show was to always instill a sense of wonder, optimism, and adventure." And if Waltke can get that and give us this hope, sense of wonder, as you're saying, it's going to honor classic Trek while also being this entry point. I'm very excited. I hope he can do it. I was thinking as I was reading this article, did they use similar words when they launched Discovery? Because again, I'm loving season 3. I don't know that season 1 and 2 really, for me, had that Trek feeling. And so if they can start Prodigy with that Trek feeling, at least for me, then I'm completely on board.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. So, Kevin, you have any thoughts on Prodigy?
It's too soon for me to get really excited about it, but I'm hanging on Janeway's involvement, definitely. To get her back into Star Trek, I can't wait. But, like I think Amy hit it on the head there. Like, you can say all you want, but let's see the execution.
Yeah, no.
And I'll get excited when I start seeing something on film or hearing something like that. So
no, I think that's fair. But you know what? I want to thank everybody for joining us. It's been a great show once again with the Union Federation, and we will be back next week when we discuss Star Trek Discovery Season 3, Episode 4, Forget Me Not, directed by Hanelle M. Culpepper, returning Hayley, that's right. Hayley, thank Amy Nelson here with the name correction. Hayley, who's directed some of the better episodes of Discovery as we've gone along. So, without further ado, my thanks to the crew, Hayley, Amy, Kevin. As always, it's been a blast.
As always.
So,
thank you.
I think we'll both continue to accidentally mispronounce her name until we keep getting it right. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
With that, we're going to get out of here. Hailing frequencies are now closed.